senior political analyst, joins us now from London. So the latest that we're hearing, Marwan, is that the UN Security Council will be holding an emergency meeting on Wednesday, as one would expect. It's the usual course of events. But tell us how, if at all, that meeting can help the situation de-escalate.
It won't. That's a simple answer. It's terribly ineffectual, horrifically polarized. It's not able to take a single decision because of, as we know, the differences between Russia and China on the one hand and Western powers on the other. And that's why it's probably going to be up to the United States to decide what are the next moves in the Middle East. What will Israel do and what will be the response and how will America redeploy? And let me tell you something, Laura. As someone who's a student of this American foreign policy in the Middle East, what I'm most afraid of is that the United States is about to repeat its horrific mistakes, failures, crimes of 2003 in Iraq. I think the United States were drawn into Iraq through similar Netanyahu-like characters in Israel and the United States. In fact, Netanyahu himself testified back in 2003 in favor of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, invasion of another Gulf War. And I think we are at the brink, perhaps, of another one. And this one is going to be worse than the 2003 war, where, hundreds of thousands of people died. Many Americans died as well. Trillions of dollars were lost. And the Middle East was really in so much chaos. This promises to be even worse unless and until people pull back from the brink sooner than later. Because a serious Israeli attack on Iran will be the real trigger for what we call the regionalization. And any American response or Iranian retaliation to American response in the Gulf or elsewhere will be apocalyptical. And that's what Netanyahu is seeking. That's what his government of fanatics are seeking. And that's why I've been urging that this is not time for jubilation and celebration. This is the time for de-escalation. This is the time for the grown-ups, whether at the UN Security Council or in Washington or elsewhere in Europe, to really pull back from the brink and try to find other ways to focus on the real issue that is at stake here, which is Palestine. It's not Israel or Iran. Before we talk about other UN Security Council resolution like 1701 in Lebanon, if we could only start focusing about 242, 338 and how we can deoccupy Palestine, de-escalate in the Middle East, then perhaps we will get somewhere.
Where are we going to hear those voices from, Marwan? Because it certainly doesn't seem like we're going to be hearing them from the Biden administration.
Well, I'll tell you, clearly, if you remember, throughout the year, we covered so many voices. There's apparently a majority in the Democratic Party today that does believe that Biden is wrong-headed when it comes to Netanyahu, and certainly Netanyahu is wrong-headed when it comes to Israel. So there are mounting voices in the United States, and there's clearly a majority in the world. I mean, look at the last vote that we covered only this past week, with something like 2/3 of the world countries want today a recognition of the Palestinian today, and they want today for any country not to do so if Israel does not deoccupy the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem, for them to sanction it. So there is a momentum. Yes, it's not enough, and yes, it's not fast enough. But once again, the problem here is that we are about to repeat the tragedy of 2003 and 2004 in 2023, 2024. Already tens of thousands are being killed in Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere. And we're about to enter into the logic of regional war with the United States getting involved. This is a very, very dangerous situation. We don't want an Iranian-led Middle East. We don't want an Israel-led Middle East. We want a united or an open or a civil, democratic Middle East. So the idea of Iran and Israel going after each other under the auspices of the United States will burn everyone in the Middle East and beyond.
Indeed. I mean, even though the an Iran-Israel war is many countries' red lines, we are not hearing those countries standing up to Israel to say enough is enough. Go back to the table. Get a ceasefire in Gaza. Stop striking Lebanon.
And one would expect and one would hope that at least Europe will take the lead. And certainly the deafening Arab silence will stop, and Arab regimes that will start taking some serious position about what's going on, because they will be next. You know, and Israel-led, Iranian-led confrontation will end up burning everyone in between. Iranians have already apparently, reportedly, told the American officials, if Israel or the United States attack Iranian oil refineries, that Iran is going to bomb most of the refineries in the Middle East. Imagine just the scene from that. Imagine what's going to happen to shipping. Imagine what's going to happen to stock markets around the world. Imagine what's going to happen to the economies of the Middle East. Imagine the possible effect, domino effect in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon. It's just the idea of this thing escalating, out of reach for everyone, because Iran is far more potent than what Saddam Hussein was after 10 years of sanctions. Iran today is far more capable. I am not one of those who will boast of any Iranian, rocket or other capabilities. I don't think that's the question. It is not as capable as the United States, and perhaps not even as capable as Israel. But that is not the question. The question is an escalation that will burn everyone in the region, because Iran does have allies with influence in various countries, including Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and elsewhere. So we are talking about a true regionalization of the tragedy that Israel has started, the United States has supported, blindly, foolishly. Biden needs to rectify, to correct his failures and mistakes in the Middle East sooner than later, even preferably before, of course, he leaves office, which means he only has few weeks to do so. He must pull Israel back from the brink, and he must start talking about diplomacy. Pax Americana cannot be just about war. It's called Pax Americana, for God's sake, meaning American peace. American peace cannot be just always about war in this region for the past 50 years.
How can Israel fight on so many fronts? We were hearing that it was difficult for them to keep up the battle in Gaza whilst trying to fight Hezbollah on the northern border. How can it now afford to open up a new front?
As you heard from your earlier guests from the United States, Israel could hardly fight Hezbollah and Hamas without the help of the United States. It was basically running out of bombs. It just needed every possible help. Every possible plane, F-15, F-16s, F-35s that it uses, all the technology it uses, the bombs, it's all imported from the United States, right? So its capacity is really that is provided by the United States. Those it's fighting, like Hezbollah and Hamas, are recent comers, the newcomers to the region, and they are really way exaggerated in terms of their potency. Everyone keeps talking about how Hezbollah is far stronger than Hamas. It's still a non-state actor with a limited capacity. It is not Israel, it is not Iran, it's not the United States. And those who support Iran in the likes of Iraq and Syria can be party poopers, can be real troublemakers in Iraq and Syria, but they don't have the reach towards Israel. So the whole idea of the axis of evil, or the axis of resistance, as the Iran would call it, is way over-exaggerated in terms of its reach. Israel can reach with its Jericho 1 and Jericho 2 and its Air Force, and so on and so forth, can reach Iran. And Iran clearly, as we saw today, can reach Israel. The psychological effect by the Iranians can be far more important than material damage. But Israel's attack on Iran can create both psychological and material damage in Iran. And that will then lead to an escalation. Israel, quickly to answer your question, wouldn't be able to fight even in Gaza, in Lebanon, without the support of the United States. That's why, like a broken record, I will repeat, the United States is responsible for arming, financing, and shielding Israel as it carries its war crimes in Palestine and other places in the region. That must stop.
Marwan Bishara joining us there from London. Many thanks indeed. I'm going to take you now to pictures that we can see coming to us from Beirut. We have just been getting reports of a loud explosion being heard in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Now, this follows a pattern that we've been seeing in the last few days there in Lebanon as Israel ups its strikes on Hezbollah strongholds. There you could hear one more explosion there. This is Israel not letting up on its offensive in Lebanon. Those are loud explosions that we're seeing there in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Those are Hezbollah strongholds. The death toll that we're hearing from Lebanon today, from Israeli strikes on Lebanon, is 55 people, and that follows 100 people that have been the daily death toll from strikes across Lebanon over the past few days. We're going to keep an eye on the situation there in Beirut. Clearly, Israeli attacks against Hezbollah strongholds there have not let up, even though Iran has just struck Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.